In the tradition of bicameral parliament, bicameralism is managed through non-legislative. It's managed outside the law. Without specific legislation. It is the norms, it is the tradition, and is a standing order. So for one to decide to come up with a piece of legislation to manage the relationship between the two houses, I think in itself, it is a new standard that the owner of this bill is trying to come up with. Mr. Speaker, I know probably one of the reasons why the owner of this bill is trying to come up with this bill is because of the power struggles that the two houses have had in the past. Mr. Speaker, you remember the petition number 284 of 2019, which led to the High Court nullifying a record 23 pieces of legislation, including the Tax Laws Amendments Act, which the court declared them a nullity. And I think when you read through this bill, you see an attempt to try and patch up things so that we do not have an opportunity of going to court when we feel that there has been some form of discrimination or unfairness on the part of Senate. So this bill, basically, I look at it from that prism, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are in bicameral parliament, but maybe we need to reflect as a house whether truly we are in a bicameral parliament or we are just something in between there. Because bicameralism has to have an upper house. If you look at other jurisdictions, UK, US, France, even here in Africa, a country like Nigeria in West Africa, bicameralism must have a house that is reasonable, a house that is small, a house that looks at issues with the expert scrutiny, a house that provides further democratic check on the lower house. That is bicameralism. But now, in this country, we basically have two houses. One house that pretends to be an upper house, which is supposed to be a lower house. I think we must have a relook at the way bicameralism is structured in this country. Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity last year to visit the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where I visited the House of Representatives and I also visited the Senate. And when you visit the two houses in that country, even before someone tells you that this is a lower house and this is an upper house, you see for yourself. You see for yourself how the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is strong and effective. And you remember that is the house. Recently, they rejected the presidential request to send the military to Niger and other countries which had problems. The House acts with some firmness. The House cannot be intimidated. I think the same should happen in Kenya. And I want to thank Senate. We have really tried. In the eyes of the public, we have come out as a more reasonable house, a house that stands with the people, a house that is effective. Unlike our colleagues on the other house, where I served for 5 years, which have become a disgrace to this society. Mr. Speaker, it was a shame the way the National Assembly managed the impeachment motion against Cabinet Secretary Linturi. And I think that should be a wake-up call to Kenyans, that we really need Senate to veto the decisions of National Assembly. Because at this rate, we are not going to have a parliament in this country. I was so disappointed, Mr. Speaker, that when the finance bill 2023 was passed by that house, the members of parliament, National Assembly were cheering like school children to pass a bill that was going to punish the people of Kenya. And then a few months later, an MP stands somewhere and says, we passed that bill without reading. That is a reason enough for that house to be vetted, to be vetoed by this Senate. And I think someone here, I think is Senator Sifuna, suggested that why can't the Senate also initiate bills to try and correct these wrongs in our parliamentary system, so that we get things to be done in the right manner. Mr. Speaker, in bicameralism, if you look at the history of bicameralism, the Senate, in our case, is a house of calm, is a house that has experts, is a house that takes time to scrutinize matters before they pass. And I think that if this person who came up with this bill really meant well for this country, he should have looked at other jurisdictions where we have bicameralism and understand that our problem is not how we relate with the National Assembly. Our problem is that lack of clarity as to which house is higher than the other. We say we are at the higher house because that is a global best practice. But legally, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to put it in our laws so that it's very clear that which house is bigger than the other. Mr. Speaker, if you read through this bill, you notice that the intention is basically to cripple the Senate and make Senate weak and weak and weak. I have gone through the provisions of this bill, Mr. Speaker, and if you look at clause 7, it is listing a number of laws and basically trying to say that this particular bill should be the powers of the other house. For example, Mr. Speaker, when under C, they say the annual county allocation of revenue bill, that it will be considered by both houses. But they go ahead and deny us the powers to participate in appropriations bill. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very clear that the houses of parliament should be involved in budget-making process. Why should we be denied an opportunity to participate in appropriations bill, a finance bill? Because after all, Mr. Speaker, we passed two major instruments in the financial process. The budget policy statement, which this House passes, the medium-term debt management strategy. Why are we involved in passing these two important financial instruments when we cannot be involved in participating in appropriations bill, in finance bill, or any other bill that is a money bill? Mr. Speaker, this is a bigger question that we want answered. Mr. Speaker, this bill also tries to, under clause number 14, where it says, if one house passes an ordinary bill concerning county government and the second house rejects the bill, it shall be referred for mediation committee. Mr. Speaker, on one hand, they want to make sure that Senate does not handle some bills. On the other hand, they want to curtail the Senate so that if Senate passes any bill that concerns counties, then they can veto it and take it to the mediation committee. That is mischief, Mr. Speaker, which I have noted there. Mr. Speaker, also, when you say that this bill affects counties and the other bill does not affect counties, it doesn't make sense at all. Because we are in the same country, and there is no bill that you can say this bill does not affect counties or this bill affects counties. All bills are the same. They affect counties in one way or another because we are in the same country, Mr. Speaker. So one wanting to legislate to make a decision as to which bill affects counties and which bill does not affect counties should not apply here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also find section 17 of this bill very, very unconstitutional, because section 17(2) says that at any joint sitting of the House, the standing orders of the National Assembly shall apply. So what do we do with our standing orders in the Senate? They are basically invalidating the standing orders of the Senate, that the standing orders of Senate are inferior to the standing orders of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, it goes further to say that the speakers of the House of Parliament shall enforce any directions given during a joint sitting in relation to the conduct of a member of Parliament in accordance with the applicable provisions of the National Assembly standing orders. Mr. Speaker, what this implies is that it elevates the Speaker of the National Assembly to someone even above our own Speaker, that this Speaker of the National Assembly will have the powers to punish a member of the Senate on a matter that has come out before the joint committee. So this is unconstitutional, and Mr. Speaker, this should not see the light of the day. Mr. Speaker, public participation. In fact, now, this bill now goes beyond the main objective, which is managing bicameralism. It goes beyond that to introduce public participation, trying to put roadblocks on the public participation. Mr. Speaker, if you read section 19, section 19(3), where it says, a committee of a House of Parliament shall have broad measure of discretion in conducting public participation. What is that, Mr. Speaker? The courts have already ruled on this matter, Mr. Speaker, that public participation should not be cosmetic. Public participation should be done adequately. But this particular section is introducing this clause so that they can, those who like rushing bills through can be able to rush through bills without adequate public participation. And then it goes ahead and talks about hides behind duplication to deny the second house an opportunity to conduct adequate participation on a bill. Mr. Speaker, on the clause 19, 8, 7 and 8, on the validity of the bills which are processed by these houses. Again, this section is unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, it says, a committee of parliament shall consider the views received from public participation broadly, meaning that the specific views received from the public will not be given adequate attention. And this law will facilitate that, Mr. Speaker. And 8 says an act of parliament is not invalid on account of failure to incorporate any views submitted during public participation. You have seen, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly. They go to the public. 90% of the views that are given by the public, they are never implemented in the final bill that is passed. One case is the finance bill, Mr. Speaker. Housing bill. All the things that the public said, they were never factored in the final bill that was passed by those houses. So basically, what this is trying to do, Mr. Speaker, is now introducing other provisions using bicameralism to make it easy for the other house to be passing bills without being questioned in court of law as to the adequacy of those bills in terms of public participation. Mr. Speaker, if you look at section 20 of the bill that says, before formally declaring the existence of a dispute between the houses of parliament, the House of Parliament shall in good faith make every reasonable effort and take all the necessary steps to amicably resolve the matter by initiating direct negotiations with each other or through an intermediary. Mr. Speaker, this is basically stopping either house from taking any other measures like going to court on a matter, so that we are not able to take our disputes to court when we are required to go to court, as it has been done in the past. So, Mr. Speaker, generally, bill is unconstitutional. This bill goes against the tenets of bicameralism that is not known globally, and this bill should not even be passed by this House at this stage, the second reading. This bill should be rejected in totality, and this bill is another attempt at killing devolution in this country. And we know that the House that has been persistently been used to kill devolution is the National Assembly. Everything they do, even the way they behave on the ground, Mr. Speaker, management of roads, rural roads in our counties, the National Assembly is an existential threat to devolution in this country. And we thought that now that we have a speaker who has been a senator, things will be different. Mr. Speaker, I am concerned that, in fact, under Speaker Wetangula, the National Assembly has become a very serious threat to devolution. I served in the National Assembly under the current Attorney General, who was against devolution, but not to the extent of the current Speaker. He has basically demonstrated that he cannot.
Senator Osotsi, your time is up. Thank you, Senator Osotsi. Senator Oroba Gloria.
Thank you, Speaker, for this opportunity to stand and weigh in on this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this time also to maybe inform the public of what it takes to even have a bill get to first reading, Mr. Speaker. Because sometimes as legislators, when we are out there advocating and trying to sensitize the public on the work that we do here, Mr. Speaker, the public sometimes thinks that you're lying when you say that getting a bill to first reading literally can cost you an arm and a leg. Mr. Speaker, this bill, even as we discuss it, is a further hindrance or highlights the hindrances that we deal with to even legislate small amendments, one-line amendments, which can impact the public in terms of changing their lives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I pride myself in being an amateur politician, Mr. Speaker, because in that sense, I get to learn a lot of things, Mr. Speaker. I get to learn from those who carry themselves as veteran politicians. I get to learn from the electorate. I get to learn from the staff who are here. So I'm proud to say that actually I don't know much about standing orders. I don't know much about, I learn. Every day for me is a learning lesson, Mr. Speaker. And I can tell you, with the 6 bills that I have tabled in the 21 or so months that we have been here, Mr. Speaker, I've learned a lot. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I've learned that